Hello everyone, thank you for joining me to the webinar on the Gizmox assessment tool, the new tool. My name is Itik Spitzen, and good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Today we're going to discuss the new assessment tool. I would say the first tool of many that will be under the name of Instant CloudMove. And today I'm going to share with you this tool and the roadmap of the other tools, and what can you do with this tool, and how can you start migration and find out how close you are to a .NET application that is fully cloud and software as a service compliant. Today we're going to discuss mainly Windows Forms .NET applications transformation into web applications using Visual Web GUI platform. And the new tool is the assessment tool. That tool will help you out with understanding the gaps that actually that can be bridgeable with Visual Web GUI between your application and the cloud SaaS compliant application. So I can see there are no questions so far. I'll give you guys time to ask questions at the end of the presentation. During the presentation, you will all be muted since we're expecting lots of attendees today, and so we would like to keep it clear and with no interruptions in between. At the end, I will give you time for questions. You will be able to click in your questions, and I'll answer them. I'll try to repeat the question and then answer the question. I will first launch a poll, which actually I want you to answer. I'm going to launch it right now. I'm going to give you guys a few minutes, maybe a minute or two to answer the poll. Just want to know how many of you already use the tool and play with it a little. I can see that from the responses I get, 78% of you did not even run the tool. Okay. So what are you waiting for? just feel free to run it. I hope you haven't bumped into too many technical issues. Just remember that it's a beta version. Okay, thank you for answering the questions. I will start the poll now. Okay, so let's simply start with the agenda for today. The agenda for today is first, as always, I will start with giving you a view on the market requirements that we see that made us create this line of products that is called Instant CloudMove. We will try to, put some boundaries on the domain of the problem, moving a WinForms.NET application to be a web cloud software as a service compliant application. We will then try to understand what is this line of product that we call Instant CloudMove that we will provide progressively during 2011. And then the major part of this presentation will of course be the assessment tool that will help you out with trying to assess your application and trying to understand where you stand in terms of moving the application all the way to be a compliant browser consumed, I would say, or browser accessed application. Within the assessment tool, we will start at how to run it. We have two versions, the 64-bit version and the 32-bit versions, and we will continue with the understanding of the extracted report. The process takes between a few minutes to a few hours. It depends how big is your application, how many code is in there, and we will try to put some figures behind the graphs and the charts that we see on the report to try and understand maybe by ourselves how many days of manual work is there. But we will then discuss the next steps that we recommend for you guys to take the output of the report and do things with it and start working, actually. At the end, before I summarize the webinar, I will try to give you a quick look on the CloudMove, on the instant CloudMove roadmap for 2011, in which we're going to release the transposition tool, which is the next tool after the assessment tool, which is, I would say, the more practical tool, not questioning the application and inquiring the application and retrieving results, but taking this result and turning it into something that you can work with. And I will talk a little about other technologies that you would like to take from client-server mode to put on the web that we can look at this point. And we're looking at a few other technologies. I will count them in a few slides by the end of this presentation. At the end, of course, I will summarize, and then I'll give you guys a chance to ask questions. So, first, the market requirements for which we have created the instant CloudMove. We're starting to create it, and we are in the process, I would say, very intensively. We understand that organizations want to reuse their existing assets. They have invested a lot of many years in many applications, organizational applications, business applications, data-centric applications. They require a lot of effort, mainly in the business logic and the UI logic and the relation between the UI components and so on. And we would like to leverage the investments that we made before and to reuse it. Many organizations consider this reuse a way to avoid re-engineering or reverse engineering, I would say, rather than re-engineering the existing application, because if they want to turn it into a web application, they will, in many cases, need to rewrite it. The move toward the cloud, I would say, and the cloud economic deployment model that is now offered gives us another incentive for moving our application to the cloud and saving a lot on deployment and on distribution of the application, exposing it to many other customers, such as partners, consumers, and things that we never imagined that we will be able to expose our application to are now possible. Of course, offer application as a software as a service, changing our business model and exposing the application through the web and through cloud deployment to other parties, and gaining accessibility from browser. This means that we don't need local installation. We open a browser, we open a mobile device, and we access the application. We can reach the same application and perform actions and read messages and go between and browse our records and so on. If it's a CRM, for example, we can provide remote communication to managers and so on. We would like to reach out to centralized management, and this means that we deploy it once on the server and it distributes automatically to other machines. We would like to maybe extract some reports and understand better the usages of our application. This is better on server-centric computing and cloud models that are based on that. And we would like to reach out to those abilities as well. And then we would like to make sure, since we're going to expose the application to many other users around the globe, I would say, we would like to make sure that the endpoints are highly secured, because if now we don't really know who is activating the application on the other side, then we would like to make sure that we understand the security hazards that are out there, and that we are secure in terms of hacking into our application, into our servers. In order to accomplish that, the organizations need to have a path to migrate their code, their existing client-server code, to be web compliant, and that's a great challenge. Okay, so that's where mainly Visual Web GUI enters as an advantage to give you that, a path to take a client-server code, an object-oriented single-layer code, or even older code, and I'll talk about it later, and move it to be a web compliant and deploy it on web servers and cloud servers. And most important thing, we would not want to make compromises on the UI, because the richness is very important. It's part of the productivity, the current productivity of the application, and the current productivity of the users, the end users that are working with the application. We would like to make sure that this will be as multi-platform as possible. So we can consume this from any devices, as I said before, HTML, HTML5, mobile devices, and so on. So we would like to make sure that as many customers or partners or users can use our application from as many devices as possible. And, of course, the security, we would like to make sure that it's proven, that it's been tested, and that we can rely on it, that the endpoints are really secured. I would like to put some boundaries on this domain of challenge. .NET, Windows Forms to web cloud, and software as a service. The challenge domain is an input of a .NET versions 1.0 to 4.0. Those are the versions that WinForms offer. 2.0 is the last version until 4.0, which actually adds some. And output, we would like to have an ASP.NET application, a rich ASP.NET application, as rich as the desktop application, and to be able to deploy it on web and cloud, and to be compliant with all the clouds that we can, we can deploy on currently that are offered to us. The challenges are first the architecture and the approach of web and cloud as being, it's at the end of the day, it's web. If you want to deploy it on cloud, you need to work over the web, and you need to have a web deployment. And it's completely different, the architecture and the approach, and you're probably familiar with this thing. The development pipelines are completely different as well. So if we have a team of developers, then if we move them from a client-server application to a web application, they have learning curve, and it's a very steep learning curve because web development is completely different. It consists of at least 2 layers, the client side and the server side, and multi-standards on the client side, and the asynchronous nature and the latency of web, they make it act differently. You need to understand how things happen on web before you start developing, and skills come with a lot of, I would say, professionalities that takes time to reach out to. So, and then since it's so different, we in many cases we need to make compromises on the UI and the richness and the abilities of the application. We're working from within a browser. A browser has its limitations as well, and often we don't know how to overcome those limitations without hurting, for example, the security and the performance of the application. And the alternatives are natively a complete rewrite. We would like to take the application, to rethink all over about the application and recreate it from scratch, because in many cases that's the only thing we can do. And we would like to offer a different path. We would like to offer a different path, and for that we're creating the Instant CloudMove. The Instant CloudMove is Visual Web GUI way to say the platform can enable you client-server code transformation that I'll start talking today about .NET, but we have also paths for Visual Basic and Oracle Forms and so on. But let's talk about .NET client-server Windows Forms applications we would like to transfer that, and Visual Web, we can enable that to a web and cloud deployment. And first, we have the assessment tool, on which we're going to focus in this presentation, in this session. The assessment tool enables us to assess the gap, and the cloud transposition tools, which are automatic and smart decision-making, decision-supporting tools, rather than, just automating. Because in many cases, we have decisions to make. It can't be automatic, and we want to take those decisions as developers and as architects. We don't want things to happen automatically and then discover that things transform the wrong way, not the way we expected it. Okay, so let's move directly to a demo with the assessment tool. And for that, I would like to run the new version of the assessment tool, which is going to be aired somewhere next week, early next week. And actually, the only difference here, there are a few slight differences in the report that result of, comments that we got from the community. But running the Visual Web GUI Analyzer today will run for you either the 32-bit version or the 64-bit version. With the previous versions, the one that you can access online now, you have to choose by yourself if it's a 32-bit machine and operating system, of course, or a 64-bit machine. So I'm running this. This is a console application that executes the right, or the I would say the appropriate executable according to the machine. And now I have this wizard. And this wizard has the first step, and I want to focus on this step. In this step, what we need to do is to add the assemblies. Visual Web GUI Analyzer can analyze IL. This means that it analyzes compiled .NET code. You don't have to run it over code. We'll have versions that will enable executing on code. But at this stage, you just need the executables. You just need the DLLs and the exe files. So all you need to do is click on Add, and then choose some assemblies. I have a demo application I downloaded somewhere, and I'm going to select the assemblies that I have the code for. Just pay attention. I don't have to select all the .NET assemblies, because there are a few interrupts here. There are components, dev components are components that I used here in the project that whoever wrote this project used this component, but I will not select those DLLs since I don't have the code for it. So I'm going to click on Open, and those are the two DLLs that were selected. When I click Next, the analyzer will start analyzing the relationships with other assemblies. So you can see here that there are other assemblies that are involved. Even though we haven't selected them, they appear here. For example, we have the Windows Forms that is referenced, of course, and the dev components .NET Bar 2 that appears as closed. So we have common, that those are the assemblies that Visual Web GUI is familiar with and can use or remap. And closed are closed source for components that Visual Web GUI will try to remap internally within the library. So those are closed source, and you can change it if you want. You can change it to be an open source if you think that you have the code after you select it, and so on. But that will be that's for a startup. When I click Next, the analyzer started its its scan. And the first pass, the first thing that the analyzer does is it's actually progressively disassembling the application into a local database that is erased completely after this assessment tool stops its run. And the second run will actually gather the information and categorize it. So I'm not going to let you wait now a few minutes. It will take 10 to 15 minutes in this type of application. It's about 150,000 lines of code application, and it takes time. So I'm going to close this. and I'm going to show you directly the report that is extracted from this process. So first, the wizard will show us the summary. And this summary, let me just open for a second. Okay. So in this summary, we see few figures. The first, and I would say the most conclusive summarizing figure, is the amount of automatic transformation. This means that this application, and I, for a reason, selected an application with lots of manual work in it. This means that 82% of the application would be transferred automatically to Visual Web GUI without any problem. You can see that there are a few other figures here that say how much I saved, comparing to complete rewrite, and how many, and how much, what is the portion of the application that needs to be manually attended, and how, and in what complexity. So, for example, I have 91.54% of the manual work as a medium complexity. Okay? So, and I have 8.46% of the application at low complexity, and so on. So we will talk about this those complexities further in the presentation, in the session. But for now, just remember that you have this summary. After closing or clicking next here in the summary, we get this type of report. So opening the report, you can, of course, afterwards save it. But when you open the report, just a second, give it a chance to load. Then I allow block content because it enables JavaScript. Just remember to do it if you want to be able to drill down into the details. And you get two charts. The left side hand chart shows the total application readiness. And the green part is, of course, the automatic part, the part that is transferred automatically. And this doesn't mean that the transposition tool will not do any type of work on this part of the application. The transposition tool will need to adjust this application or these lines of code to be a Windows to start as a Windows Form application and end up as a Visual Web type of command. But it will be very, very similar and even identical in many cases to the code that we had initially. So that's why we call it transposition and rather than migration, because we take the code, we don't really change it, we change the infrastructure, we change the way that things actually relate one another, but we don't change the code. So if a developer that develops this application bumps into the transformed code or the transposed code, he will most certainly understand the code and knows and will know where to look for what. The right side hand graph shows the amount of work, or not the amount, or I would say how does this work relate to complexity. So we have the manual work, and here is 17.43% of the application is manual work, and this manual work consists of 91% or even more than 91% medium complexity and 8.46 low complexity. And as I said before, this is a very rare application. We received many reports from the community so far, and this is the most, I would say, challenging application that we've seen today. In most of the cases, we're getting at least 92 to 97% readiness, and this means that we have less challenges. But that's okay. That's why I selected this one. The next part of the report, and this part is new, so if you download today, you won't see this part. This part specifies the assembly and the status of the assembly, I would say. If it's a code, because we selected it to be a code. If it's If it's source, if it's something that we can control the source, don't need to have access for. Common is most likely the system library that we need to we need to refer and rely on, but we don't need to rewrite. Windows Forms is source. This means that we replace it with Visual Web GUI and with source library. But common is things that we can reuse. We need to check them more specifically, that the analyzer checks them more specifically, but to begin with, it's a common library. Okay, so here is the summary. The next section is the summary that we saw within the wizard itself. And then there's the report data. This is a highly comprehensive drill down that shows you actually the challenges. So for example, there is this type, button item, that appears in the project and is referenced to, you see, 2,000, above 2,000 times, and is coming from dev components assemblies and need to be replaced. So we need to take this button and create this button and replace it with the dev components. But this doesn't mean that we have to do it manually. In many cases, we have those features and abilities within Visual Web GUI, and we can offer you ways to either extend them or even just use them. So this doesn't say that you need to write this button item from scratch. If I click on the plus here, I get the usages. Where do I use this button? And in which types? Those are types. And how many times? The reference counts. The next thing would be the members that are not mapped, that need to be refactored or recreated. So, for example, set image is referenced to 27 times. And if I click on the set image itself, I can see the usages of the method itself. So it's a highly comprehensive drill down that shows us where we use things and how many times and how many things I have to replace mapping to Visual Web GUI. So I have this report here, and I have the complexity level. In most of the challenges, I can see the complexity level. For example, this is the medium complexity task, and so on. And I can drill down into the details of this and understand where am I standing and what kind of project am I facing. So this report shouldn't scare you because it consists of a lot of data. And there are many things here that we remap or we cross-map very easily. So this doesn't mean that you don't have to make decisions, but it will not. It also doesn't mean that you need to rewrite it all or recreate components for this matter. So there are many cases that we can remap those things and let you know about it. So this is where I always say that we highly recommend you to send this report to us, and then we can send you a deeper analysis of this. And with the deeper analysis, we can specify the amounts of work. We will talk about it in a few slides as well. So we have this report, and now we know something about the gap between Visual Web GUI and our source application, I would say. And now we would like to go ahead to the next step. So we ran the assessment tool on the compiled assembly of our application. We got the total level of readiness for the migration and the complexities of the manual work, the list of complexities. We have 5 complexities. It's trivial, very low, low, medium, and high. And it's highly recommended to send the report to us, since we can provide more detailed information. So the next step will be, after you send the report to us, is a deeper analysis that we provide for free. We get the report. We perform some, we do some work on it, and we analyze it more deeply. And then we can extract for you the number of days for manual work that needs to be done in the project for a basic skilled .NET developer, which means that those are tasks that the .NET developer, a basic skilled .NET developer can do by itself. And the estimation for the amount of services that we will recommend you to consume as Gizmo's professional services. So in many cases, if you are representing a system integrator, this knowledge can be transferred. If you're a system integrator, you will most certainly want to do it by yourself, but the first project will be will need our involvement. But if you are a system integrator, you will most probably do the first project with us, and then you can use maybe a certain level of consultancy from our side, and maybe custom development, but you can do all the rest by yourselves. The next step would be, after we more deeply analyze your report, is to create with Gizmo's professionals a migration plan. This migration plan would say, okay, we have to automatically transfer this code, and then we need to attend this and that and those things, and those few things we can do by ourselves with .NET developers that we have, and those things we need consultancy from, and here is the custom development that we need Gizmo professionals to do, and we can, estimate the costs and everything that surrounds this project, the testing effort that is required and everything. The next step would be then to perform the automatic migration. So the automatic migration I already implied on the roadmap. For the next few weeks, Gizmox is doing the next steps. This means that we have the tools internally to transform the application from being a .NET Windows Form application to Visual Web GUI. We have those transposition tools already internally, but they are not in a status that can be released. They're not documented thoroughly, and so on. So within a few weeks, we'll be able to release the first beta and the first beta version of the transposition tool. So this will enable you guys to run the transposition independently. And then you will probably need to accomplish pieces of manual work according to the detailed plan. And this will, you can decide who does the job for you or if you do it by yourself. So that's, I would say, summarize the assessment tool. Within the summary that we provide you, we actually, or the detailed analysis that we provide you after you send us the report, we can indicate which parts can be performed by .NET by a single or basic skill .NET developer. So this means that you can then, you can summarize it for yourself and conclude the amount of work out of it. So that's the most important thing that I want you to remember. Sending us a report is a very important step here. So I would like to try and describe the process of migration from Windows Forms to Visual Web GUI for you, and to describe the roadmap that we're going to release progressively, the tools that we're going to release progressively within the next month. During 2011, we're going to release all the tools that are required to perform the migration by ourselves. So I would say that during 2011, you will probably need our help to do it, and to some extent, and it goes and as we progress, it becomes less and less important to use our help. But the first migration beta version will be released by January 2011. And this migration tool, it's a very important thing to understand, actually takes a Windows Forms application as an input. And not just replaces the namespaces, because that's the most trivial thing to do. But there are many concepts that Visual Web GUI relates to differently. For example, images and resources and events that are not supported but supported differently, and we can translate it for you. Dialogue appearance, code modality, and so on. So these transposition tools, and the first of them would be the migration tools that we're going to release by January next year, will be the tool for you to transform a Windows Form application and make the application compile directly from the output of the tool. So we will make sure that the input is a Windows form and the output will be as compilable as possible, in many cases even compilable. It will not be far from being compilable, and in many cases it will be compilable. So you will get, this is what you will get. You will get the automatic part already there. So for example, if we had to transform the way you are related to images, we will transform it for you. If we have to transform the way you related to dialogue and past data and resources and so on, we will transform those concepts for you, and so on and on and on. If you have third-party components, we will remap them as possible, or cross-map them to existing controls, or if we don't have them, we will extend the existing controls, creating open spots for developers to complete the work. And then we will recommend you which part is most recommended for you to do by yourself, and in which part you need our consultancy, and in which part you need our help. So I think that this will result at the most end-to-end solution that we can offer. It will be very close to compilable. It will be compiled in 90% of the cases, and then you have open areas in which the developer should add its code to, and it will be exactly according to the assessment. If the assessment tool said that we have this button item, and then the refactoring of the tool will create automatically this component and will map it to Visual Web GUI component, or leave it empty for you to cross-map it to Visual Web GUI component if you want. And you can decide within this process, you can decide which components you want to be created automatically and which you want to leave as is. The scenario installation tool is a very important tool as well. It provides us three major things. One is the ability to convince you or our customers, or your customers, if you are service or system integrator or software house. It provides the ability to isolate a scenario or a module from within a large application. So if we have a very large application, then we would like to take a single module and move only it to Visual Web GUI just for the test, or maybe if we want to run a pilot that to move a few people that do this specific scenario to the web, we will do this and keep the remaining of the code Windows Forms. So that's the first thing that it provides. The second thing is team collaboration. If we want to accelerate the migration process, in many cases we would like to isolate modules vertically and provide each team and each developer a different scenario to deal with, so it helps us with team collaboration. And maybe the most important thing that it provides here is the ability to vertically split the project into pieces, or divide the project into pieces and move the application module by module to the end result, the web outcome. So that's the scenario isolation. Next, we're going to release the comparison tools. Comparison tools are also very comprehensive set of tools that will enable you to record scenarios in the source application and compare them with scenarios in the target application. So we're using aspect-oriented programming to record those scenarios and, analyze the path that the code went through and compare it to the new application and see if we missed something, if it doesn't behave as we expected. It will also record queries that goes out of the application, the I/O environment, registry calls, and so on. So we will compare those two applications, and we'll then get a report that say, okay, this differs. In this scenario, the original application created a file this size, and here it created a file this size, and the files do not match, and so on. So it will give us a comparison. And this tool is targeted for unit testing, not for QA purposes, because it's still about code. It's all about code there. If you take a QA, an average QA, a QA or a QC man will not, or a QC person will not notice the names of the objects and the names of the members, will not understand the path that the code went through, and only the end result. So it's not for QA and QC. It's for the developers to perform unit testing and understand the gaps better, if there are any gaps. The transposition tool wizard is, I would say, the end result. We're going to create a walkthrough, a wizard that will take you step by step, and this I can estimate will only be released by the end of 2011. But we don't have yet final date, and it can be even earlier. But I can estimate it will be at least by the second half of 2011. So the transposition tool, you can picture a walkthrough that first does the migration, then enables you to isolate scenarios and walk through this scenario specifically and create a working module of this scenario. Then you will have the comparison tools that will enable you to compare the two results, or the source and the target, the source and the newly created application. And the transposition tool is a wizard that walks you through this process and enables you to make decisions regarding to those steps. So this is the big picture, I would say. And I will just mention that if you are willing to do this process already, then we provide all of those things already, but as a service. So we can enable for you the migration tools, but those will be released soon as a beta, the first beta. Scenario installation as well. We can isolate scenarios for you and make sure you are convinced with the ability of this thing to work on web and cloud, and also we can provide you services to to accomplish things that are highly complicated, with complexities medium and above, or at least a few of the mediums need our consultancy. So those are the type of services that we do, and we help you achieve your goals. And that's that's the way you do it. You run the assessment, you send us the report, we create a plan together, and then we go about the migration. We split the work between us. We see we can understand what is the level of your developers, and together with you create the plan, and then start working and accomplish the web cloud deployment. We are looking at other technologies. So we already have paths for Oracle forms with the help of partners, ATX technologies. They know how to take Oracle forms and they move this application to Windows Forms, and we take it from there. We don't take it at the point where it's completely functional. We just need the initial wizard, the initial translation wizard of ATX to work, and then we take the output code and move it through a comprehensive a process that actually reassembles, I would say, the application, because those migrators, they tend to create a code that does not compile. And that's a fact. If we take, for example, code architects or Arkansas that take Visual Basic 6, they take a code from VB6 and they create a code, and it's a very good .NET code, but it has a lot of manual work there. So we've created a set of tools to take this broken code and reassemble it all together and create from it something that links and compiles as a first stage. We create the proxies, we offer fixing for the missing references and missing links according to the level of compliance between two, I would say, two methods, the original method and the newly mapped method, and so on. So we provide those comprehensive tools to recreate the application or reassemble that application. And from this point on, we're using the same set of tools, the migration tool, the migration tool. We don't really need the migration tool as a whole, but the migration tool consists of proxy creator, which is a piece that we need because we want to wrap the features that we don't have. So we use some features of the migration tool. We also use the scenario isolation because at this point we might want to take a look at a single scenario or split the work to into team of developers, or move the application step by step by modules. And of course we then use the comparison tools and so on. And the comparison tools will be evolved to run on VB6 and Oracle Forms as well in the future. But this is a very it's a long-term roadmap. It's not for 2011. So with Oracle Forms, we do it with ATX technologies. They move the application to Windows Forms. With Magic, we have a partner that does it. He takes the Magic code and migrates it into .NET code, and we take it from there. By the way, the Magic migrator really does the job. It does compile and it does even run. So they completely mimicked, I would say, the entire Magic environment on .NET. So the challenge for us was to create their library that adjusts between the code and Windows Forms with Visual Web GUI. So we already have this library adjusted. So if you have a Magic application, we can take it through the process with Firefly and then move it to the web and cloud using Visual Web GUI. Visual Basic 6 is, of course, with the aid of Code Architects and their tool VBMP, their migration partner tool, and Arkansas VBUC tool, the VB Upgrade Companion tool, and we're looking at other technologies as well. We're looking at Power Builder. We're looking at COBOL application. We are looking at Delphi applications as well. So we're going to partner with partners that know how to take the .NET code and move it all the way to .NET. And to a certain level, we don't need it to compile, as I said before. And if this code is we know how to evaluate it. If this code is sufficient for us, we can take the output and move it all the way to the web and cloud. So if you have other technologies and you know of partners that or third-party vendors that can take your code and move it to .NET, even if it's a project, we can consider partnering with this third-party vendor and provide the same path there. So we're looking at many Delphi migration providers right now, and Power Builder is providing, Power Builder 12 is providing the ability to compile to .NET. We are examining this as well now and if we understand that this gives us the starting point to use our tools, we will then offer Power Builder as one of the technologies that we can migrate. So let's just summarize what we saw here, and I give you a chance to ask questions. First of all, the assessment tool is a tool that enables you to take a project with Windows that is written .NET Windows Forms and assess the amount of work that needs to be done there in order to move it to Visual Web GUI, Cloud, Web, and Software as a Service-enabled application. So you have this tool. Just go ahead and download it, and send us the reports. It's very important to send us the reports. I heard of a problem that people try to send us the report and receive the email bounced back to them. So you can send directly to support or directly to oricoin@gizmox.com or to me specifically. It's expitten@gizmox.com, and we will be happy to analyze it for you. So if there are problems there, okay, I can see there's a problem here. Maybe a question, just a second. Okay, I'll answer that. Thank you, Mr. Srinivasan. I hope I pronounced the name correctly. I will answer your question in a few seconds. I will give time for questions, and then I'll answer. I'll read the question first, and then I'll answer it. So that's the first stage. And then if you send us the report, we can then send you detailed migration plan or create with you the detailed migration plan based on the deeper analysis that we can provide. And the instant CloudMove line of product is about to be released, progressively during 2011. But we already provide those tools as a service from Gizmox. And by the way, if I haven't mentioned so far, the transposition tools are licensed per line of code with Windows Forms and VB6, and with Oracle Forms and Magic by the number of modules and the number of screens. So in Oracle Forms it's modules, and in Magic it's screens. But Windows Forms is licensed per line of code. And then if you you manage to run the assessment and we do the job for you and create this cloud output for you, you can go ahead and perform all the work with the help of us as consultants. And we also mentioned a few other technologies that we know how to take and move all the way to the cloud. So I now invite you to ask questions. I hope I was clear enough. I have one question from, let me try and pronounce it again, just a second. Okay. So let me just resize this. Okay. So will the tool also help me to with web applications? So actually web applications are, I guess you mean ASP.NET applications or .NET web applications, maybe Silverlight, I don't know what technology. Visual Web GUI actually mimics client server over the web, and that's the advantage of Visual Web GUI. Migrating web applications to web and cloud is a much less challenging problem, although it can contain other challenges as well. But this actually, there is a vendor called CloudSwitch that I'm familiar with that knows how to do that. So you can go to them. They know how to take web applications, for example, Sugar CRM and other web applications, and maybe even custom-made applications, and help you move them to the cloud. They're called CloudSwitch, so you can use their help. Another question from John Hastings. is our biggest concern is our use of the third-party component C1 Flex Grid. It is used extensively throughout our application. How can I, okay, one second. How can this be handled? Okay, so about third-party controls, and that's a very important issue here. Progressively, we're creating equivalent controls in Visual WebGUI. But the automatic refactoring of proxies will enable you to get a very good starting point for which you will be able to either map an existing ASP.NET control. For example, the equivalent component 1 control. The Flex Grid already exists on a web version and migrated into Visual WebGUI, or we can analyze the capabilities that you're using within your application together and provide you custom-made control on top of Windows Forms control to provide all the capabilities, including look and feel and all the shortcut keys and so on. So actually, the answer consists of two parts. One is, yes, we can migrate in any ASP.NET controls that are equivalent to the controls that you're using in Windows Forms. And all the vendors there, third-party vendors, they provide web equivalents. But if you don't have it, or if you don't want to use ASP.NET controls, because ASP.NET behaves less responsively, I would say, and less securely than Visual WebGUI, then we can offer a very rapid creation based on our technology, because with Visual WebGUI, we have the whole stack of technologies in our hands. What we can do, we can offer you custom development to create C1 Flex Grid with your capabilities in, so you can use it within your application, and then the control would be a plain Visual WebGUI application. So you don't have to, you don't have to recreate it or use an ASP.NET control. So we do those things, and we're aware to the fact that most of the real-world application out there, they don't use WinForms basic controls. That, it's rarely done. In most of the cases, I would say 95 to 97% even of the cases, we have some custom controls, and in even more cases, we have some third-party controls. So in time and during 2011, we're going to create all the equivalents to popular C1, Component 1 components, and Infragistics, Telerik, and so on. But for now, we can offer you customization and make sure that all the features that you're using within application. Just remember, we have this analyzer that shows us the usages that you do within the control. So we can, you can map I would say the subgroup of features that you're using. So I hope this answers the question. Feel free to ask any questions if you have. Okay, so I have one other question from John. We use Active Report for most of our printing needs in our application. We use TX text control for our word processing needs in applications. We show some three-dimensional graphic using OpenGL and Tau framework. Would these work on a web-based system? Well, first of all, yes, there are those are challenges, but they all have equivalents in Visual WebGUI, because Visual WebGUI is a plain web. So, for example, if you want to mimic the OpenGL, we can create an ActiveX that communicates with the OpenGL locally. We have some other frameworks like Silverlight that can, mimic the same behaviors. We will have to assess that. Of course, if we will see that, the level of readiness of your application is 50% or 60%, this will tell us, okay, there are a lot of challenges there. The only reason to migrate this application and not recreate it or do something else with it or keep on using it as is will be if you don't want to, you must have a cloud and SaaS deployment and you don't have other options. And the other option is to completely rewrite the application. So in most of the cases we have alternatives for this. We have the alternatives to WordPress locally, and this actually is a plain web control. You don't have to install anything on the client. But yes, OpenGL is a challenge, but we have users that are using OpenGL within Visual WebGuide. It's a client-side solution, but it's embedded within Visual WebGuide. So I hope this actually answers your question. In many cases, we have such things that, you know, we recommend people to do it client-side because just imagine mouse moves and things like that. We don't want those type of intensive events to go back and forth to the server, sending all over packets of HTTP just for mouse move, for example. So we don't send it back to the server, but we provide an alternative on the client side, for example, for mouse hoover and so on. If I look at HTML5 and we are going on this direction, Gizmox is going to provide an HTML5 supporting version in the very near future. And so if I'm looking at HTML5, then the challenges become much less challenging, I would say. So because we have lots of capabilities within HTML5, and I suppose we will see HTML5 capabilities and third-party components that you will be able to use freely within Visual WebGuide because it's completely client-side. And this will give answer to all the type of client processing that Visual WebGuide doesn't do on the server. I hope this answers your question. Do you help with the migration of the database scripts? No, actually Gizmox is not professionalizing in database, but we have partners, some in the US and in Europe, that do this. So if you want someone to do this for you and someone to assist you on migrating database, we know professional companies that actually know how to do that. They can transform Oracle database to SQL and MySQL and vice versa. And they can take even Magic Btrieve database and move it to other SQL or MySQL and so on. So database mobility is not our business, but we can provide this. We can provide a partner that can do this part of job for you. For example, if you're looking at Azure, SQL Azure, for example, there are not many challenges there, but if the database is very large, then you'll have to split your database and so on. So we have partners that know how to go about this as well and help you with this type of project. So we handle the application and not the database, but we can provide you partners that do it. What about DirectX instead of OpenGL? Okay, so as I said, there are many alternatives. DirectX is as well a client-side, so we will still have to have some client-side technology there, ActiveX or a Java applet or a Silverlight control, or Silverlight does not do DirectX, but in the future it will do DirectX, and Flash that does not do DirectX but can replace it in a way. So yes, that's the way to do it. We replace it with a client control, and then we can do either DirectX or even OpenGL. We can do with OpenGL. We can do OpenGL within an ActiveX. That's completely fine. But this will have to be client side, such as HTML and any client side. Any other questions? Okay, another question here. If you're using MS Access, should we migrate to SQL Server before we start this? Actually, you don't have to start with moving to SQL Server and then do the migration. it's not, it's not. You can still use MS Access and the application on the cloud, and then choose to move to or web, of course. Cloud is not so good with MS Access, but if it's EC2 Amazon Cloud, for example, you can still live with the Jet engine. But if you really want to move to SQL Server, it doesn't really matter how you do it. You do first the migration from MS Access database to SQL or the application. I do recommend to start with the application because the database has, I would say, it's less a project. It's a migration. There are tools that are fairly automatic that do it, and the migration in many cases is a mini project that you have to go about. So you can leave the MS Access as a start for a start, and then move the MS Access. But you can choose to do a vice versa as well. Other questions? Okay, so if you don't have any other questions, I'll thank you very much for being here today with me and joining me to this session. I will recommend you to run the assessment tool. And as I saw before in the call, not many of you ran the assessment tool. Just execute it on your compiled assembly, and just go about sending us the report. Is very important because we will then be able to send you a deeper analysis. And the most important thing in this deep analysis is the days of work figure, because this actually tells you how many work is it really to move your application. So I think that the message here should be: go ahead, download the assessment tool, run it on your app, send us the report, and we move on from there, recommending you on the best way to go about moving this thing. And I can't wait for the tools to start releasing, because I think you'll love it. Those are tools that really automate things up for you guys. So I thank you again for joining me today to this session, and hope to see you on board with the instant CloudMove. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.